Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Two Way Tonight. I'm Mark Halperin, 5 Eastern Time. Thank you for being here. Um, the president's had two long sessions with the media today. One ended literally seconds ago. Sometimes in the press, in the video business, they'll say moments ago, but it literally was just moments ago. He took the last of many questions that he took at his second session of the media. Did one this morning, one just now. And we'll show you a lot of what he said. The war could be over soon, but it might not be. The meeting with Premier Xi could be delayed, but it might not be. It probably will be. Really, just a question of how long it's delayed. And it continues to be a lot of focus on the degradation of the Iranian military capability and the ability of the United States to open back up the Strait of Hormuz. And little progress seemingly made on that front today. More of the countries the president and his advisors have been trying to entice into being part of a force that would somehow open the strait through military projection and military power. Not a lot of takers so far. And it continues to be the case that markets around the world are handling this pretty well. Oil prices are higher, gas prices are higher than before the conflict started, but they're not moving towards $200 a barrel, for instance, which is what some, even amongst the president's advisors, had feared. So it's an interesting moment. And we've got two great guests to talk about this, or three great guests, I should say, to talk about this. They'll be here in just a moment. And as always, we'll welcome your questions, your comments, your suggestions, your corrections, everything you want to say. If you're here on the two-way platform and want to be part of the conversation, please raise your hand. If you're watching on X or on YouTube, do not raise your hand. And please, whatever you do, all I ask is that you put no smack in the chat. Think about peace, love, and understanding. Let that imbue everything, animate everything that you do today here on the platform. One more time, I'll say, if you've never raised your hand, regardless of your point of view, please think about participating today. We love hearing from new folks as well as people who've asked questions before. And this platform's for everybody. I know sometimes, even though I don't read the chat, sometimes people can be pretty hard on others in the chat. Everyone welcome here, all voices, regardless of your position on Donald Trump, on the war, on Stephen Miller, on Adam Schiff. Regardless of your position, you're welcome here. Please raise your hand if you'd like to be part of it. We'd love to have you. Okay, let's do this. Let's get in some sponsor, and then we'll get to our guests and to the news of the day, and then to your questions. Thank you for being here. As I said, grateful to you for being part of Two Way. To reward you as being part of the Two Way community, what about 20% off everything on the Cozy Earth website? Dogs love the Cozy Earth bubble cuddle blanket, but so do humans. I don't think you can put the Cozy Earth socks on a dog, but you could buy them for yourself. Everything on the site now, go to cozyearth.com, promo code two-way for 20% off. What does comfort that carries you from morning to night feel like? This March, Cozy Earth crafts every piece with care, from soft, supportive socks for your steps through the day to breathable comforters that help you rest deeply at night. Right now, in March, you can get 20% off everything on the site. Go to cozyearth.com and use the promo code two-way for everything on the site. The socks, the sheets, the bubble cuddle blanket, the Luxe bath towels, all available to you now. Discover how care in every detail transforms simple routines into moments of true comfort and ease. Ain't nothing like the Cozy Earth products. CozyEarth.com, promo code two-way for 20% off. All right, so you got your clothes, your sheets, your towels, you're all ready to go. What are you thinking about now? You're thinking about you want a tree, maybe more than one. The folks at fastgrowingtrees.com will also give you 20% off everything on the site. It's a miraculous experience to go get the mail, pick up your Sears catalog, your Spiegel catalog, and there on the porch, along with the catalogs, are some trees in a giant box. Fastgrowingtrees.com, America's largest and most trusted online nursery. Thousands of trees and plants. Over 2 million customers have purchased trees from there, as have I. It's like a local nursery, but it'll help you exactly where you live. It'll tell you what you can buy, and shows right up and work in your climate, your space, your lifestyle, whatever you're looking for. The folks there will help you out. You just click, order, and grow. And everything comes with their Live and Thrive guarantee. Promises that anything that shows up after you've ordered it will be happy and healthy. Don't need a green thumb. Either keep it in the pot it comes in, or go ahead and plant it outside. Spring is the right time to do this. So go right now Get 20% off. Go to fastgrowingtrees.com. Use the promo code two-way and get yourself some green. Thank you for your attention to that matter. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here come our guests. And we're going to make sure everybody knows where they stand so there's no confusion. So let's start here with the pride of the Buckeye State. Mehek Cooke is here. Welcome in. Tell folks what you think of the conflict so far. For it, against it, for it with reservations. Thank you for being here. Just share your overview so everybody knows where you're starting from.
Well, Mark, thanks for having me. And let me be clear, no American wants war. So when I talk about sentiment today, everybody wants this to be resolved immediately with Iran. But I stand with the president today. We've seen 5 decades of a Cold War with Iran. We saw what President Trump would do. Jimmy Carter couldn't. Reagan tried. Clinton ignored. You saw President Bush start. Obama continued to fund. Biden begged through pallets of cash that Obama had sent with additional money. And Iran continued to develop a nuclear weapon and a program. And when President Trump came in, he was very consistent, Mark, in terms of making sure that we ended this and we had some sort of treaty with Iran so we could come in, nuclear cooperation, so we could see what they were doing. Iran continued to push the envelope, and we needed to end this, not only because of the Iranian threat, which is terrorism that they have ensued on Americans, our embassies, our proxies, and allies, but also for generations to come. I think that everybody's going to talk about oil prices today, and I welcome the discussion. Biden had continued oil price surges. What President Trump is doing, though, he has a mission that will actually help us for generations. So the Strait of Hormuz is no longer a piece on a chessboard that we have to continue to fight. I really think we're going to see economic security. And I say this with a lot of thoughtful analysis on what's happened in the Middle East. It's not just about America today. Our allies have been held hostage as well. And the Gulf states, you've seen this. For the first time in history, they're consolidating around the president. They're calling out Iran.
Beck, welcome back. Thank you for being here. Congressman, thank you for coming back. Where are you, the conflict currently? You don't hail from the state that founded Wendy's, but you do have pretty good food in South Carolina, so you're welcome as well. Thank you for being here, Congressman. Where are you currently on the conflict? For, against, reservations, please?
I mean, look, if this could be resolved quickly, I'm all for that. I think a lot of us who have, people in my generation that have gone through the last 20 years of, the quote unquote endless wars. I mean, look, there's a lot of anxiety for getting drug into an endless war in the Middle East, and that's what this appears to be. I mean, even with the Iraq war, there is a lot of selling by the Bush administration. I mean, Colin Powell went to the UN to talk about this. Like, there has been little to no effort to sell this to the American people, from what I've seen. And I'm down here in South Carolina. I'm surrounded by a lot of Republicans who feel like they were misled by the Trump administration and his campaign of against endless wars. And I mean, this wasn't something in Iraq and Afghanistan that happened 100 years ago. I mean, this has been in our lifetime. Like, we've lived through this, and we should have learned these lessons. And so there's a lot of hesitancy into engaging in this, and because we know that, look, Iran is going to they're going to respond and probably throw out some hay balers, and one of them may connect, unfortunately, with a base or American troops, and it's going to drag us even further into this. So I'm going into this clear-eyed about the notion of history and what's unfolded in the last 2 or 3 decades.
Thank you for that. Wait till ladies and gentlemen, you hear the wind-up as I introduce our next guest, who's making his debut on the platform. Joe, have you ever seen the headquarters of the Rain Corporation in Santa Monica, California? You ever seen that?
Of the what corporation?
Rand?
No.
Okay. Mehek, have you ever seen that building?
I haven't.
All right. It's a beautiful building. It's just massive. It's beautiful. And the people inside, it's a big building, but it's hard to believe that the brains of the people inside fit in that building. And it's a great irony. It's right near the Pacific Coast Highway. You can buy corn dogs and lemonade just blocks away. But it is some of the smartest people in America work there. One of whom, I don't know if do you work in the Santa Monica office? Is that where you work?
No, I actually work in the DC
The
campus.
DC, but you've
They
been to
expanded the
you,
school
yeah,
to the DC
yeah,
campus. If you know where Pentagon City is,
yeah.
that's where it
But
is.
you've seen the beautiful building in Santa Monica.
Oh, I've been there many times.
Many
Yes,
times. All right.
it's
All right.
awesome.
So a few days ago, I talked about our next guest on the program, not knowing that he's a sometimes viewer of the morning meeting. Here's a clip from me from the morning meeting just a couple days ago. Roll that, please. Air Force Lieutenant General named S. Clinton Hinote, I don't know how you say his name. He serves as senior air strategist in the Middle East in the 2000s. Quote, the Strait of Hormuz is a difficult, almost impossible problem to solve through military means alone. He did a military study looking at the question of a scenario in which Iran attacked ships in the Strait. His team concluded that while the United States could use advanced sensors and precision strikes to mitigate Iranian attacks, they could not stop them completely. The shipping lanes are too narrow and the vessels are too vulnerable to a mix of rockets, missiles, and swarms of small craft. The only way militarily to guarantee the waterway is open, to move from mitigation to control, would be to take and hold the Iranian territory bordering the strait, he said. It would require large numbers of ground forces to seize the coast. Short of that, the only lasting solution to the strait is a diplomatic one. I reported this the other day. You got to control the coast. You got to disarm the coast at least. All right, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, we start with an apology. Clint Hinote.
I know that's right.
I
Yes.
pronounce his name all the ways that'd be wrong. He's a scholar at the Rand Public Policy Rand Corporation. Again, it's one of the smartest think tanks in America, and a former Air Force Lieutenant General. Welcome, sir. Thank you for being here.
Mark, it's such a great honor to be here. I've been a long time part of the 2A community, and I really do enjoy the dialogue, the civil dialogue. In fact, I was telling my friends peace, love, and understanding today. So I'm excited about being with you, and thanks so much for having me on.
Well, honored to have you here. And we're just going to start we'll get to with all the things the president said today. We're going to start with the topic I quoted you on, and ask our two colleagues to jump in and ask you questions as well. It seems like central to trying to degrade Iran's capabilities, trying to get their nuclear material, trying to deal with their counterattacks. But it seems like a big focus continues to be the Strait of Hormuz. And as you wrote, very, very complex. The president spent the weekend saying he wanted to get other countries to provide ships to help deal with that. The New York Times reported today that the Joint Chiefs said one guy with a frisbee and a boomerang could disrupt traffic there. So, does it make sense for the president to be trying to get these other countries to participate in trying to escort ships through, or no matter how many countries are involved, that's still not a good mission?
Well, I think it makes sense from the point of view that it's nice to have a lot of countries sharing the risk. I don't think it makes a lot of difference in the short term if Iran has chosen to close the strait, because the president talked about it today at his meeting with the Kennedy Center. He talked about the threat, and the threat is not that we can't mitigate the risk down to, we can be 95, 98, 99% successful, but that's not good enough to get the traffic moving through the strait like it was before. And so until something changes, it's very unlikely that any of these countries are going to be sailing through the Strait of Hormuz with their navy. Their navy would be excellent, and if you were truly trying to do an operation to open the strait, it would be a good idea to have them with us. But in the short term, we're going to have to do other things to mitigate the threat.
What would that look like? So right now, there's a bunch of ships. Where are the ships hanging at? The ones, whether they've got oil on them or something else on them, or they're empty. Where are they now? Are they in various ports?
There have been some good maps about the shipping lanes and everything. It seems like on the eastern side, they're all kind of conglomerating around the opening of the strait.
Right.
And then on the western side, there's some very interesting stuff going on. There's a lot of spoofing of the AIS system. That's the navigation system. And so when you look at it, it looks like they're all moving around, but that's really spoofing by probably Iran. I think
Right.
we can guess that. And so, but it does appear like they're more spread out around Bahrain and Qatar in that area. But it does seem like many of them are at anchor, just waiting for something to change.
All right, two more questions for me, and then I'm going to let Mac and Joe ask you questions. Let's say that they want to do this mission. That China said yes, British said yes, France said yes, Japan, South Korea all said yes, and they sent ships to the region. That would take a while, right? Take 2 weeks minimum.
Mm. Well, it depends on where, but at least a week.
At least a week. Okay, so the U.S. is organizing this. What do they say? Like all line up at one end? Like, what does that look like if they really did
Yeah.
this? Would they escort their own country's ships through? Would they go one at a time? Would they surround a ship with oil on it? How would that mission actually be enacted?
Well, you'd have several options. That you could try to put together a true coalition effort. That would require shared rules of engagement, and you have to kind of work through. That's almost like a negotiation in of itself. You would probably need to be able to talk about the encrypted radios and encrypted data going back and forth with the different parts of your coalition. So that takes some time to work out. And one of the interesting things about a true coalition is that each nation will carry the ability to veto something for their assets. So we
Right.
call those the red cards. So each of the top ranking people of their nation in the coalition carry a red card, and they throw the red card on the table when the coalition is doing something, but their nation is not going to participate. It happened in Afghanistan. It didn't happen a lot, but it did happen, and that would happen again, and it would depend. The other way is you could just say, well, we're going to escort these, and you're going to escort these, and
Right.
you would deconflict that way. And I think the where I would be very interested in seeing that work would be if China gets involved, because I do see a world where Iran might let China transit the Strait with Chinese vessels or vessels that are going to China or going to Asia. And I could see that as being a way that there would be traffic going through the Strait. But at the same time, I'm not sure that really helps our side of the equation because there still would be the problem there.
All right, last one for me. Sometimes I hear administration officials say it's not true what the press is reporting that the Iranians have put mines in the water because ships are going through. Are there such a thing as mines that can be turned on and off, or do they tell the friendly ships where the mines are and we're not able to detect them? It seems like they're either there or they're not, or there's a way to have different ships not be blown up.
Yeah, one of the interesting developments over the last few decades is there are smart mines, and conceivably they might have them. I don't know. I mean, I don't think we truly know how quote smart their mines are. But as an example, there are mines that sit on the bottom of the seabed and they can come up when they're told to. And there are also mines that go off only when they're armed. Sometimes they sense they sense hulls going past, and they can wait like until the third one or something like
Right.
that. So there are smart minds out there. My sense is it's probably not that they may have them at the bottom of the ocean. I do not necessarily think they've deployed mines yet because we do see some traffic going in and out. And once you start deploying mines like for real, a lot can go wrong,
Yeah.
and like they can come off of their chains and things like that. A lot can go wrong, and you would not want to risk your own friendly shipping, uh, just
Yeah.
with a bunch of mines. My sense is they've held that back, and it's more of the threat of mines that is working for them versus the actual laying of mines. But that does remain an option they could take.
Right. All right, Matt, questions for Clint?
Well, I think you talked about China, and I was excited to hear that. So I look at leverage today, and I'm not sure where Germany and Britain and many of our NATO allies will be, but I really think the strategy is through China. So do you think that there are some strategic ways to work with China through the United States, not only to create some type of partnership, whether that's decreased in tariffs as we continue to negotiate what that looks like in the next 2 to 4 years under President Trump, but then use that as a choke point to force and push China to work with Tehran? What does that look like? Because I do think China is the key to all of this.
Great
Yeah.
question.
I'll answer it this way. for many years, I'm trained strategist in the U.S. military. That doesn't mean a whole lot. It just means that I've studied a lot of this stuff. For years, I've wondered what the world would look like if China really acted in ways where they would start paying for the public good of things like freedom of navigation and things like that, as opposed to having the United States and Western countries mainly paying for that public good with the time, the effort, the treasure, and all of that we had done. And so it would be very interesting to me if China began to take responsibility for the public good of freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. The world would look different. The world would look vastly different. And there's some very interesting kind of side questions that would come with China taking advantage of that opportunity. One would be, are we going to not have the petrodollar anymore? Are we going to trade in yuan? And maybe we would. And maybe that wouldn't be that big of a deal, but some people think it would be a really big deal. So the idea of the public good and public safety and the commons has always been of interest to me. Traditionally, China has taken advantage of the Western insurance of access to the commons. And it would be just fascinating to see what would happen if they started to pay more for that. In some ways, they would gain more power, I think. And in other ways, it would allow us to do other things with our time, money, and people.
Joe, before you jump in, something on China, the president said in this photo op that just ended this morning, Secretary Bessent and Caroline Leavitt both suggested that the summit with Premier Xi, supposed to start in a couple weeks, could well be delayed. Here's the president tonight making some news about his request for a long delay.
Plan to travel to Beijing at the end of this
I don't know. We're working on that right now. We're speaking to China. I'd love to, but because of the war, I want to be here. I have to be here, I feel. And so we've requested that we delay it a month or so. And I'm looking forward to being with them. We have a very good relationship, but because of the war, there's no tricks to it either. It's not like, oh, gee, I'm waiting. It's very simple. We got a war going on. I think it's important that I be here.
Chinese don't like uncertainty. That month, maybe a month delay is going to make them a little bonkers. Joe, thoughts on the China delay and question for Clint Hinote?
Well, I mean, not surprising on the China delay, right? Considering everything that's going on and the role they're playing. I mean, Clint, I guess I just ask you, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how foreseeable do you think this was with the traffic, and what could have been done to offset it from the beginning?
So I think those are two very different questions. I mean, I'm biased here. Several of the people running this war are friends of mine. And as an example, Admiral Cooper, the commander of Central Command, one of his jobs, in fact, we were 3 stars together. One of his jobs was Fifth Fleet Commander at Bahrain. He knows about the Strait. There is zero doubt in my mind that this came up as the deliberations and planning was happening. There's just no doubt. When I say we, the U.S. military would have highlighted the threat of the Strait of Hormuz being blocked or degraded by Iran. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're great options for it. I think we can get it down to 95, 98% safe pretty quickly. We might even be there right now. But it's that last 1 or 2% that is so difficult to deal with. And I am relatively certain that the options that were presented were, if you want to be 100% sure, you've got to control the land on both sides or have allies that do, or you're going to take some level of risk in transiting the Strait if Iran believes it's in their interest to close it. Remember, Iran has kept it open in many cases before, like 12 Days War, they kept the Strait open. So I think there was probably some level of, well, we're not 100% sure they would close it, because if they close it, then it would be bad for them too. And they wouldn't have cash coming in and things like that. So no doubt in my mind that military options were presented, and they probably sounded like we can get it to a decently safe spot, but we can't get that last 1 or 2% without some real big lifts.
How would there's a story in the New York Times today, I've not confirmed it myself, that says that the president was frustrated when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs told him, as you suggested, you can't be 100% sure, and that it'd be relatively easy for some craft or someone with a missile, whatever it is, to disrupt. How's the Pentagon feel about that? Are they, people always talk about people in the Pentagon sort of CYA saying, don't send us into a mission that we're not sure we can achieve. Would they be, if the president said, I want to take the risk, would they be reluctant to do it? Or their view is, if we can't be 100, we shouldn't do it?
So again, truth in advertising, Raisin is a friend of mine, and I know that he was trying to do his best to inform the president. In fact, there were reports about him talking about some of the downsides and the risk prior to the operation. And I suspect that was true.
Yeah.
I think it's a relatively easy answer to your question, Mark. If we're ordered to go through the Strait, we'll go.
Yeah.
And it really
let's play act. And I'm sorry to interrupt. I'll be the president. You be your friend, General Kane. Okay. You know what? I've heard the risks. I understand you can't be 100%, but let's start sending ships through, and you do your best to protect them.
I'd say, Mr. President, we'll do that, and we'll start doing it as soon as we can. The downside to that, just so that you know, sir, is that there's a decent possibility you're looking at a destroyer or a cruiser at the bottom of the Strait of Hormuz, because it's such a narrow waterway and you're so predictable when you're going through that narrow waterway. And while I think there's a good chance we will get through, when we do it over and over and over, they will see what we're doing, they will adjust, and it's very likely that we'll see something like 2 guys on a jet ski or a underwater drone or something like that. That's just a very difficult threat to intercept. And over time, we expose ourselves to that. And that does come with it the possibility of losing one of our naval ships.
And he said, all right, don't let that happen. And you go out and do it.
Yeah, then we go do it.
Yeah. Is air possible to protect the ships through air?
Oh, there is no doubt we would use air cover. Zero. We would use drones that are flying overhead that are looking around. We would use fighters. Anything that if we had to, we'd use bombers. I don't know that they'd do a lot of good, but it might not be bad to have the firepower on hand. We used to plan carrier transits of the Strait of Hormuz, where we'd take one of our carrier groups and we'd put them in and take them out. And it was a joint operation through and through. It was everything. All hands on deck, getting in and out. That would happen again. You would have cyber, you'd have space, you would have ground forces. They wouldn't necessarily be in Iran, but they'd be around helping, and you definitely have air cover.
Okay, I'm going to show 1 or 2 sound bites from the White House today, and then I don't want to waste this extraordinary opportunity for you all to ask questions of our 3 guests. So if you'd like to get in on the conversation, please raise your hand. Let me just show you a few things. First, this is the Vice President today. He has not talked much on camera since this began. And answered reporters' questions. He's done a little bit. Here he is in the Oval Office today asking about attempts to suggest he's got a different view than the president. Number 5, please.
Second, given your past skepticism of foreign adventurism, are you completely on board with the current war in Iran?
So I like fraud czar. It's certainly what we're going to do. And look, we have to do it. As the president said, this is a problem that has festered in this country for far too long, and far too few people have actually wanted to do anything about it. That's what makes this administration different, is that we actually tackle the problems the American people have been confronting. So I'm very happy about it. And look, I think that I know what you're trying to do, Phil. You're trying to drive a wedge between members of the administration, between me and the president. What the president said consistently, going back to 2015, and I agreed with him, is that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. We have taken this military action under the president's leadership. I think all of us, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, should pray for its success and pray for the safety of our troops. That's the approach that I've taken. Make it as successful as possible.
So there's no hesitation, given your past statements, with the current operation?
What do you mean there's no hesitation with my past statements?
Given your skepticism of foreign adventurism, you were a critic of the global war on terror previously.
Well, I think one big difference, Phil, is that we have a smart president, whereas in the past we've had dumb presidents. And I trust President Trump to get the job done, to do a good job for the American people, and to make sure that the mistakes of the past aren't repeated. Absolutely.
Thanks, sir.
Look, JD's been great, but here's
Mac, what do you think of your fellow Ohio State resident and the substance and politics of that answer?
Well, Mark, I love JD Vance and I like how steadfast he's been with the president. I think what mainstream media constantly tries to do is wedge politics. They use one statement from somebody, whether it's the press secretary to JD Vance or anybody else that is standing with President Trump to create wedges. So I think they've been very smart. President Trump is the one delivering the message and continuing to explain what's happening in Iran and why it's important. And that was just exhibit A of many where the press has always gone to JD Vance to see if he thinks differently. He's in the situation room with the president. He's not going to share his personal thoughts, but we know he's united. And that's the type of governance we want today. I've seen so many leaks from Washington. This is just an epic display of not only loyalty, but understanding the importance of the Iranian regime. He nailed it when he said it wasn't just about Republicans and Democrats. It's about the American people. We should all be coming together against terrorism.
Congressman, I want to show you the Prime Minister of England. This is representative pretty much of the reaction of most world leaders who've been asked by the president and his team to participate in this conflict and sending craft to the region. Here is British Prime Minister Starmer number 10, please.
While taking the necessary action to defend ourselves and our allies, we will not be drawn into the wider war. And third, we will keep working towards a swift resolution that brings security and stability back to the region. We cannot allow the war in the Gulf to turn into a windfall for Putin.
The reports by several organizations that Mr. Witkoff has been texting with the Iranian foreign minister. The Iranian foreign minister a few minutes ago denied that, but there are clearly conversations going on. Joe Cunningham, what role would you like to see America's allies play in this conflict? Would you like them to participate militarily, or would you like them to be working on different tracks? What would be your preferred outcome for them?
Well, look, I'm an American first, and I want to see this come to a swift end. And I don't want to get drawn into a prolonged war. And so, I mean, look, there's a reason diplomacy is a time-honored theme, right? Because it works. And so I think there's any and all efforts that can be made in engaging with our allies to bring this, war to a speedy end should be encouraged. Whether or not they want.
Sorry to interrupt, but does a speedy end come if they help us militarily, or does a speedy end come if they stay out of it?
Well, look, I think they should be negotiating right now. It should be bringing all parties together. And again, like as we mentioned earlier, bringing the allies together to patrol the Strait is not going to come in days. It's going to come in weeks or months. People need to get to the meeting table and start negotiating some type of landing for this. Because in the United States, it does concern me for our country to be going at this alone. And so to the extent we can have allies on our side, even if they're, negotiating with other players, I think is a big win. Whether or not they can be drawn in to a wider war, I think honestly kind of depends on what unfolds in the next couple of weeks.
All right, Clint, one more question for you, and then we're going to open it up. If you read about the history of conflict, of wars, often there's military to military conflict communication that has diffused the situation, or maybe in some cases ended a conflict. I've read and heard nothing about whether historically or currently there's contact between the American military and the Iranian military. What do you know about that?
I've served in the Middle East a lot. I have never heard of any sort of high-level military to military conflict between the United States or even any of our allies and Iran. The one area where that might be slightly different is in the the ship-to-ship communication, because often professional navies do have communication back and forth. My sense is that probably did happen in the Gulf region for years, but probably isn't happening right now.
Why wouldn't Iran have shut down the Strait before?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll tell you, this is my opinion. What I'm getting ready to say is my opinion. I'll tell you the evidence that I think about it if you want me to. I see Iran right now as almost just blindly executing their playbook. And that would make sense given that you had the decapitation strike very early in the conflict. It seems to me like there's not a whole lot of thought given to this is just like, I mean, I could have said this is going to be their playbook for, the equivalent of World War III for them. This is what they're going to do. And there doesn't appear to be a lot of thought about like taking option A, but not taking option B. It just seems like they went full 100 miles an hour and they just went straight into their war plan, which would have included missiles against all of the our allies in the Gulf, where our bases are, and would have included closing the Strait of Hormuz. And so to me, you may have a situation where the decapitation strike has led them to almost have a zombie strategy where they're just executing the playbook. And it will be interesting to see how long they execute the playbook.
Yeah, thank you for that. Kelly Jordan, great member of our community, has been complaining. She's a bunch of hack congressmen, political operatives, and journalists on. Have somebody on who actually knows something about how the military works. So Kelly, you asked, we delivered, thanks to Clint and Hinote reaching out. So Kelly, very proper. You would have the first question. Don't blow it, Kelly. Don't ask him like where he gets his shirts.
No pressure. And Mark, I think I was kinder.
You were
I just
very
strongly suggested
you're absolutely right. Thank you.
A shipping expert.
Tell folks where you are and what's on your mind for our guests.
So I'm Kelly. I'm going to call myself a shipping nerd. That I truly am. Kind of a hobby I've loved discovering. But Clint, my question actually goes a little bit back to, and I think that Trump was right in when he was talking about that our maritime services were gutted, right? And he started saying this going back historically. My question is more specific to you, Clint. How do we fix that so we can continue to? Obviously, we were vulnerable here. We won't get into the insurance and all that somewhat triggered this. But how do we set the course straight going forward so we're no longer vulnerable?
Great question, Kelly. Thank you.
Well, Kelly, thanks for the question. It's not an easy question to answer. One of the things that is happening is not necessarily that our Navy is getting worse or our Marine Corps is getting worse. It is that the rest of the world in many ways is catching up to some of the information age weapons that are out there, and that includes drones. And I'm especially concerned with the on the surface and underwater drones. You've seen these in the Black Sea, where Ukraine has used those against what is a very formidable navy, or at least was, of Russia's Black Sea fleet, which is a shell of itself right now. Ukraine never really had a navy, but what they had was this asymmetric advantage in drones. And so I think this is something we're going to have to reckon with going forward. What does the world look like in an era where information age weapons are the norm and they are spread throughout the world? My personal opinion, I was the Air Force's futurist. I think you're going to increasingly see that frontline forces, the forces that are first to come into contact with the enemy, and this will include in air, land, and sea, are going to be unmanned. They're going to be autonomous, and I think we can win in that world. I actually think we're going to see a lot of that. I'm a little surprised we haven't sailed an autonomous ship through the Strait right now, just to see. But I think that if we do see our Navy sail through the Strait, it's probably going to be something autonomous first. That's what I think.
What are the sizes of our autonomous ships?
Yeah, boy, that's a good question. There's one that's out there that has the outrigger floats everything. They're not very big. One of the great things about unmanned vessels of any kind, so that would be on the land, in the air, on the sea, is you can manipulate risk in a way you really can't do with Americans. And so I actually think you could manipulate risk pretty well with a small fleet of uncrewed vessels going through the strait, because you could essentially kind of force their hand, and find out what their plans are and probably thwart them, or at least react.
Yeah. Kelly, did you have a follow-up?
I was just gonna say, how would you extend that to like the merchant marine, specifically, like the, not Navy, but merchant marine? I don't want to go into too much detail, but
Yeah, so Kelly, I got to tell you, I think there's a really good chance, and it won't be that long, that many of these tankers will not have crews on them. They'll be autonomous, or at least they'll be autonomous across the major part of their voyage. And then what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to get your crew on maybe when it's like 30 miles out or something like that, and they can guide it in. But I do think that you're going to see increasingly that the major shippers are going to use autonomous vehicles. In the same way, I think you're going to see that with FedEx and UPS and others who are going to do that with air transport as well. And I actually think that's probably good for a lot of people, and risk will go down in that world.
yeah, and that would certainly solve the problem.
Kelly, thank you. Grateful to you. Well, they could still blow it up and remove the capacity to ship. Joe or Mehek, do you have any follow-up on the topics we've been talking about, or thoughts you want to make?
Yeah, I mean, just in Clint, brought out a lot of good points and talking about, the administration sending vessels through. I mean, at some point, though, you got to remember that these ships have to be insured, right?
Yeah.
And having a large number of insurance carriers already dropped coverage, and what's going to encourage them to, insure a vessel going through that?
Mehek,
I mean, even if it's one ship attacked every 45 days, or 1%.
Yeah. Mehek, do you have a question or comment you want to make?
Well, I know we've talked a lot about the Strait of Hormuz, but I'm really curious about just Clint's thoughts on what we're doing in the United States. One of the principles for President Trump was really energy independence, right? You saw what Biden did through shutting down the Keystone Pipeline, over-regulating our ability to drill here. And President Trump has pushed through not only regulatory barriers, but continuing to make sure that we're energy independent. So how much of this can we continue to ensure that we're dependent on our own oil supplies as we continue to look at the Strait of Hormuz? Because I don't think we're at a choke point like China is, which gets 90% of their oil from there. We're still very self-reliant here.
It's an interesting point, and taking a step back, one of the things that we talked about, that in many ways, when you're talking about high-level strategy, it's sometimes difficult to distinguish between military strategy and economic strategy and even political strategy, depending on what you're talking about. But the idea of energy independence was certainly something that was talked about at length post-Desert Storm, because there was this sense that we needed to go. That was one of the reasons why we had to go answer what Iraq had done in Kuwait. And as the fracking revolution happened, it certainly seemed like a tremendous amount of the oil that we needed could be produced in the United States. And I think that is probably true today. One of the questions I would have is, was the fracking industry spun up because before this happened, oil prices were pretty low. And so it's not clear to me like how much, because you always have to have a financial incentive to the pump. So I wonder if that was...
Hold on just one second. The congressman needs to leave, and just want to excuse him properly. Congressman, thank you for making time. Great to see you as always. Look forward to having you back.
Clint, Ms. Cooke, thank you so much.
Thank
Pleasure.
you. Clint, please pick right back up where you were.
Yeah, and so as we kind of think about like where we are with energy independence, one of the things I'm actually not very happy about is that we are still somewhat dependent on the world oil markets, because that's clearly what's happening here. And my hope would have been that we would have been a little bit more independent of, you might call it the ups and downs of the market, than what we are, because I've seen what's going on at the gas station down the street. So, every time I think we've solved this, this is a recurring theme for those of us who grew up in my generation serving in the military. When are we ever going to get out of the Middle East? When are we finally going to figure out, some way of not being drugged back in every time? And presidents of both parties, multiple countries, multiple different forms of crises, but it just seems like it's it almost is like the force of gravity that continues to draw us back. And for many of us, we gave up a lot of our lives, and unfortunately, some of our friends did give up their lives serving in the Middle East. And because of that, it's like physically painful. This is 100% true. I didn't watch the first 5 days of the war, and the reason is I was physically sick by the thought of my friends going back, and then literally our sons and daughters going back to the Middle East to have to fight again, no matter what the reason. And that's not saying that it might not be the right thing to do, but it just seems like, gosh, can we ever be done with this? Yeah. And I think that is probably, I think there's two things happening right now. The military is professional. They're going to do what the commander-in-chief says. They're doing it with excellence right now. And then there's also this deep sense of foreboding, like, oh my gosh, again, really? And so that's what you're hearing right now.
Thank you for that. Jason, welcome, and tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind for our guests.
Hey, Mark, I'm here in Maryland on the Eastern Shore. So I live in a small town on the Eastern Shore. And actually, Mr. Hinote, General Hinote, what he was just saying is exactly what I wanted to bring up about the war in Iran. I wish I was more knowledgeable about this topic, but I did some just like really cool. I had this question, right, which was kind of like what was just brought up, which was like how much have we been involved in the Middle East in the recent in kind of like recent decades. And I was surprised to see, again, wish I knew more about this, but I'm learning. I was surprised to see that I believe if you word it correctly, like every president since Reagan, there has been an airstrike in the Middle East. So the way that I was thinking about it was just from like layman's terms, like how many presidents have bombed the Middle East? Like that was just kind of my general question. And so I guess the technical term would be an airstrike, but even if it's just like a limited airstrike, like in Syria, I mean, every president since Reagan, there's been an airstrike in the region. And so my question is actually like what not necessarily like what the de-escalation is, but if this is all about Iran, right? Like if everything since Reagan has all been kind of pointing back to Iran, if you can find their tentacles in all these little things or big things that have happened, like what is the risk of just ending it, right? You know what I mean? We've started it. So what is the risk of ending it? Does that allow them to kind of then flare back up again? And now the next president is just going to have to do it again? So that's
you mean the risk of just stopping the conflict and walking away?
Yeah, just stopping right now and walking away.
Mehek first, and then Clint. Go ahead.
Well, that's such a good question, Jason. And it's something that I've studied because I haven't lived the last 5 decades like maybe others have on this call. But I can tell you that when you look from 1979 to date, there's not a single president until President Trump that finally decided to intervene. What I have seen are global security agreements, and sometimes they work, and I applaud them because that means we're unifying in a mission, right? So allowing the U.S. to come in and inspect and working on international cooperation. But what's occurred with Iran, I mean, they are not only the family and the IRGC. I mean, this is an ideology when you say death to America. So it was very fundamental as they continue to attack our allies at our bases and our embassies and killing troops that we had to take action. But President Trump gave them lots of opportunities and he never hid the ball. He always said Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. And I researched a lot of what was happening in Iran. I mean, they were capable of 6 nukes, maybe even more, until the US intervened. So I think it was extremely important. But I say this, and I say it with a heavy heart. We have lives lost. We have anxiety in America. We're looking at our gas pump today and we're wondering how we're going to afford our bills. But I know one thing, we'll finally have an end rather than a cycle. And this is why I said it's about future generations. I want to be able to live the next 30 or 40 years that God gives me in peace rather than continuing to wonder the next time we have a proxy attack. Iran doesn't fight fair. They fight through Hezbollah in Lebanon and proxy militaries. It's never Iran versus the United States or Iran versus Israel. And so we had to put an end to this.
Clint.
Boy, Jason, you've in order to truly answer your question, there would be a lot of layers of the onion that need to be peeled back. I think the thing that I would say is Iran is the source of much tension for the United States. Probably not the only, well, definitely not the only source. There's a very interesting schism in Islam between Sunni and Shia, and the Iranians are the leaders of the Sunni part of that, and in many ways that comes with many of the tensions that we've seen. On the on the Sunni part, that's where you got Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and others, and they really don't talk to each other. In fact, they fight each other a lot. So it's not just Iran, and then you start getting into the tensions with Israel and the rest of the region, and I could peel a lot back. What would happen if we walked away? You know, I will tell you that as I was at one time the air strategist for the Middle East, so I worked out of the Air Operations Center, and I looked at Iraq and Afghanistan, and I was the strategist for that. I advocated walking away. If you remember, there was a review done by the president, and it looked like we were going to walk away. I never agreed with the Pottery Barn rule. Especially in Afghanistan, because I mean they were the ones that were harboring Al-Qaeda, and so it is an option to walk away right now. It's probably going to mean that the problem won't be forever taken care of. It does play into a theory of victory that Iran would have. Here's what I believe Iran's theory of victory is: outlast the United States, raise the pain level as high as possible for the world, so the United States, so that what the United States is doing, it doesn't last as long. Stay in power, use the guns to control the population, and get back to business. That's their theory of victory. And if the war ends today, like say we stop doing everything today, one of the things that would happen would be that there would be people who would say closing the Strait of Hormuz caused the United States to stop. That has the potential to hurt our deterrent threats in the future. And that might not be a good thing for the long run. And that's why I don't think you're going to see the president walk away, certainly at this point. Now, I have to say, the thing as a strategist that I hate to see, but that I could see happening in this situation, and I saw it happen in Afghanistan and Iraq, it's called the sunk cost fallacy. It's that, well, we've put all this into it. If we just do a little bit more, then we will be able to prevail. I saw that like 10 years in a row in Afghanistan. I mean, it was like, well, it's not going well now, but it's, you know, just keep on plowing resources in and next year it'll go better. I don't want us to get into that type of a situation, of a dynamic. And so I hope that the option of walking away is something that is talked about in every situation room meeting. That's not necessarily to mean that it's the right option right now.
Yeah. Jason, great question. Very much appreciate you asking and being part of Two Way. Thank you. Let me get one quick more sponsor in, and then we'll get at least one more of you in here. It's dinner time, at least back here in the East. And for a lot of you, thinking about what you're going to have, you're thinking you want something healthy, affordable, doesn't take long to make, and doesn't take long to clean up. And most of you will fail if those are your metrics of success. But here's the way to succeed. Become a subscriber to the service Factor that produces real healthy meals with great lean proteins, vegetables, fresh, never frozen, and whole food ingredients, healthy fats, the kind of food you'd make for yourself if you had time to shop and cook and clean up. No refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners. Factor is a subscription service. You subscribe, state your preferences of what kind of stuff you want. It shows up. You put it in the refrigerator, take them out. Takes 2 or 3 minutes in either the microwave or the oven. Easy to clean up and to get a healthy meal. And right now, you also get something else. You get 50% off your first box of Factor dinners, plus free breakfast for a year. Go to factormeals.com/28tonight, 50 off, and try something new, healthy, affordable, and easy. Go to factormeals.com/28tonight, 50 off, 50% off your first Factor box, plus free breakfast for a year. Monica and Jennifer, I'm going to bring you both in. I have you both ask your questions because we're towards the end, and then our guests will answer. Monica, you first, unmute. Tell folks where you are, what's on your mind for our guests, and then Jennifer, you'll come right in. Go ahead, Monica.
I'm in Northeast Florida, and I have a couple questions. One is related to the security at home now that the war is on. We know that there's terrorist cells in our country, and yet the budget for DHS has still not been approved. We have huge crowds gathering at airports, which would be prime target locations for a mass casualty event, and Congress is not doing anything about it.
Monica, what's your question on that one?
What is Congress going to do? Because
Okay.
I mean, we Americans are being
Yeah.
impacted. Second question
Yeah, real quick.
is, so far the war, they've spent $18.5 billion in 16 days. That's a significant amount of money when Americans are hurting. How can they justify that to the American people?
Thank you for those two questions. Jennifer, welcome in. Question for our guests.
I'm on the same strain. I'm a suburban mom. I have teenage kids. My opinion is that every day this goes on, the president will lose support. He's bleeding support. I don't know anyone that supports this, and I am a supporter of the president for 3 elections. It breaks my heart, again, like the money, the $18 billion, people can't afford things. Our kids are struggling to go to college. There's so many problems here. And the thought of, I thought he was on such a good track with the Abraham Accords, settling the Gaza situation. And then one morning we wake up and he's, blowing the Middle East to smithereens. And you're just like, what?
Yeah.
And I feel like the support is going to bleed every day this goes on. And if there are more casualties, it will be unbelievable. And I feel it's a betrayal to people that voted for him, because it's going to bring in Democrat power. And that's just another thing that we did not want.
Right. Okay. Thank you both. Really great questions. And you both speak for tens of millions. So 2 issues. One is, how are we going to settle this question of DHS being funded, which is really intractable right now. It's been going on for a month and no end in sight. And then the second question about the expense of the war and the dangers of the war and the political dangers to the president. Mac, why don't you go first? Pick up on all 3 questions that you wish, and then Clint will come right after you.
Well, in terms of DHS, it's heartbreaking because we know that ICE agents are already funded. Remember, they were funded through the big, beautiful bill. So it's TSA agents and families. I've actually read an article, I think it was CBS, where a father had to quit because he has 3 children at home and can't feed families. This is where we can't be a political football anymore. It's about national security, and Democrats should be coming on board. We're being held hostage by a minority, and we're not actually using common sense. These were the same Democrats at one point that wanted to secure the border, that wanted to ensure terrorists weren't coming into our country, that actually declared Iran a terrorist threat. It's so much anti-Trump and not really about the American people that I worry we're going to have another terror attack that will actually be carried through. Remember, we thwarted 4 attacks in less than 10 days. Thank God for the FBI and the intelligence that we have, but we need to put pressure on Democrat colleagues and Republicans to come in and unify, because it's now or never. DHS is so critical and important, and I don't want to lose any more agents. And in terms of the war, you're right. No American wants war. But at the end of the day, President Trump isn't playing politics. I know how hard this is going to be for the midterms. We already had it hard. Anytime you have a president, it's the opposite side that wins, right? We have lower turnout. We have depressed voters by 15 points on the Republican side. But President Trump wasn't making a political calculation. He was thinking about what we could do to secure Americans for generations to come. And he hasn't talked about a prolonged war for years. He's talking about weeks. He's putting pressure on our Gulf partners. He's trying to work with NATO. He's even extending an arm to China. And I know I saw a comment about China being a geopolitical threat. I 100% agree with you. But remember, this is about oil, which is fundamental for our future, for our energy, for our supply. So it impacts independents, Democrats, and Republicans. And I think if you continue to have faith in what President Trump is doing, you will see oil prices decline, as the Energy Secretary has talked about this summer.
Clint, if you submitted $150 expense at Morton's Steakhouse to Rand, they'd probably question it. But the Pentagon spends billions, and Congress and the president mostly say okay. What is your view about the money already spent, and how much more expensive could it get?
Well, we're going to find out when the supplemental comes up. Every time we have a wartime supplemental, the department will try to expand it to deal with a lot of other fiscal problems that happen. OMB is where I think I'm really watching. I want to see what OMB does with this supplemental before it goes over the Capitol Hill. That'll be a fascinating part to watch there. On the terrorist threat, Monica, I think there is something going on here. I think the Iranians are smart enough to know that the country is divided right now, and the easiest way to unify it would be a mass casualty event. And I think they're smart enough, and this is where maybe my autopilot or zombie strategy argument breaks down, but I think they're smart enough to know that a mass casualty event would unify us and would probably be much worse for them, much a longer war for them. And then Jennifer, what I would say that is really important for all of us to remember, I hope that we can separate our feelings about what our people are doing in our name in uniform and the policy. There was a time in our country's history where we got that wrong, and that was back in Vietnam, where we thought, and unfortunately there was this equation between what the troops were doing and the policy of the United States, and that tore our military apart for a long time. It took us decades to rebuild. My hope is that, and believe me, our people in uniform know how deeply divided the country is over this war. My hope is that we as a group of citizens can do a good job of separating out what they are doing in our name versus what the president has told them to do, and that it's possible to hold two opinions. For those of you who are against the war, that still you can hold the opinion of what is going on with the people who are acting in your name. They're doing the best they can. They're putting their lives on the line. They didn't ask for this. They didn't know. I always find it interesting when people say, well, they knew what they were signing up for. No, they didn't. And many of them are paying for it with human cost, the cost of time away from the families. And then, of course, we've had 13 that have died so far. And war, the last thing I'd say is war comes at a high human cost. My heart goes out right now to all the people who are bearing that cost.
Yeah. So grateful to you both, and for Congressman Cunningham. Thank you for coming back. Clint, I hope you'll come back regularly. We'd love having you on, and love having you part of the two-way community, and your expertise is going to be invaluable, probably for at least another month. So whenever you have time, we'd love to have you back on both my evening and morning programs. Thank you both. Tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern, in 1 hour, is Lifelong with Ethan Suplee. Guest Kelly McKenna, CEO of End Chronic Disease, and Joshua Ray Walker, the musician. Opportunity to be part of a community that really cares about living a healthy life. So please join Ethan here on Two Way at 7. Michael Moynihan Wednesday night is doing a live in-person event. If you're in New York City and would like to go, it's Automation Nation, exploring how AI is reshaping the workforce, its impact on pretty much everything, and whether it's going to revive the debate on universal basic income. We'll have a Q&A and, of course, a live stream. So if you're in New York, you want to go attend, ticket information, a Village Underground website, the Comedy Cellar, or go to twoway.tv/automation. And I'll be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time, with the morning meeting with all the overnight developments, including, of course, related to the conflict. Thanks again to Congressman Cunningham, to Mehek Cooke, and to Clint Hinote. Grateful to all of you and grateful to you all for being part of the Two-Way community. I'll see you in the morning. Have a great evening.